It is 21 next on January 23rd. Good evening. Hello, I'm Joel D in the place to be, and we have a number of reporters to give you the biggest stories of the day right now. Let's get right to it. Jasmine Brooks is in Shippensburg following up on a huge sinkhole that is affecting a number of families in that area. They're fixing the hole, but they got a long way to go on what happens next for them. Jasmine, what are you working on in particular right now?
All right, so we are on our way to the property right now. There are two-family hotel and a mom and dad with 4 kids living at a hotel. We're catching up with them now. You can see their house, actually. That's Brandy's house. I'm going to meet her right now. She talked to her partner. He said the house is 10 times worse than it was last time they saw it yesterday.
Ooh, okay.
So we are going to get in that house. We are going to see the condition. They have all their stuff in there. Now, there's a little light at the end of the tunnel for this specific family. They already had an application for another home in Newville, which isn't too far away from here. And because of what went down with the sinkhole, they're able to get into that home tomorrow. So hotel life won't be long for them. But because that whole structure shifted, they can't even close the front door and they have all their stuff inside. Meanwhile, for the public, the street's now open. This went down around 7:30 Tuesday, and by noon today, that road was filled and reopened. The question now, what's going to happen to these structures? And that is what is yet to be seen.
Okay. What about the other family? Have we know anything about them at this point?
So the man with the 2 teenagers, he
Yeah.
was reluctant to talk a lot. He said that his landlord's helping him out, and so he is in the hotel right now. Where he's going next, I'm not sure. Are we seeing the actual property? We're just kind of pulling up here trying to find these two properties. But yeah, so they're not officially condemned. Okay, there's a notice on the door saying, "Hey, don't go in here," but they're not, officially condemned right now. We got to get the insurance adjusters in and stuff like that to actually see what happens to these properties. But they're certainly not, you know, they shouldn't be lived in. That's what the borough manager tells me.
Well, it sounds like, if especially if it's getting worse, that yeah, you don't
Right.
know what the scenario
Right.
is there. Okay. Well, we look forward to your report on that, and
Yes.
we will see you tonight, field anchoring at 5 and 6. Thanks a lot, Jasmine.
See you then. Thanks so much.
All right. Next up is Elise. We've seen a lot of violence this year already, in Harrisburg in particular, a lot of gun violence, and you want to think sometimes about the stories behind the stories. And a lot of times it is teenagers committing the violence and also the victims of this violence. Getting behind one of these stories right now, Elise Person. Fill us in on what you've been working on.
Yeah, so I actually just spoke with the father of now 14-year-old Zaki Talib-Davis, who is we're sitting right now actually outside the Dauphin County Prison getting everything ready for our 5 and 6 o'clock news. And that's where he is right now as well. So he's now 14 years old, but he was charged at the age of 13 with first-degree murder for the shooting death of 18-year-old Tyrone Parent. So we've talked a lot about who Tyrone was, his background. He was, just a few days away from graduating when he died back in June. But this is the first time that anyone has heard from the family of Zaki Talib-Davis. So his father said, "Hey, my son is 14 years old, staying in the Dauphin County Prison. I want to see him be tried in a juvenile court setting." So he said, "Look, I'm not asking for anything more. He still needs to, have accountability, go through the, due process and whatnot." But he said, "Look, he's 14 and he's been in the Dauphin County Prison for 7 months. He should have been a freshman in high school." So really, it's kind of getting the other side of things, as we've heard so much from the families of victims. What about, the individuals who are, facing adult charges as, young teens?
Did you talk to the parent at all about what actually happened? Were they willing to go there with you as to the scenario surrounding the shooting?
Right. So he would not go into details, as you can understand. I mean, this is an active, going through the court systems right now. We did speak, though, with the district attorney about how this is moving forward. Technically, on paper, if you were to look up Zaki Davis's docket, it says that he has still yet to face a preliminary hearing. But I think there's some things going on behind the scenes that we don't know about because he is a juvenile. Those details are not out to the public, but the district attorney says right now there is a motion for this to be moved to a juvenile court setting, but that's up
Okay,
to a
that's
judge.
interesting. Yeah, I did a story a few months back on charged as an adult, and it's mandatory. If it's a murder, you have to be charged as an adult initially. It can be taken down to the other system if there are some mitigating circumstances there. It sounds like they're looking into those, but initially you are in the system. And then like the parents say, maybe you're caught up in between here. You're a juvenile, but where do they keep you? Are they keeping you around adults? Now they do protect you and they try to watch out for those scenarios. But as a parent, no matter why your child's in trouble, you'd want them to be in the safest scenario, right?
Yeah, so I think that's the big thing now is he kept saying, "Hey, I mean, he's just sitting there. He's been there for almost 7 months. He celebrated his 14th birthday in there." He said, "I try to talk to my son. I try not to miss a visitation. We get together. We get to talk to one another." But a thing that he spoke to me about is the juvenile system versus the adult system. He said, the juvenile system, it's meant for restoration and rehabilitation. He said, but that's not what's happening at the Dauphin County Prison, because he said they don't have the resources for someone that is 13 or 14 years old the same way they do at a juvenile detention center. So that's what he's saying is, he said, quote, "I just want him to get fair justice." That's what the father told me. So again, we'll see how this moves forward, but it definitely is, in my opinion, an interesting perspective to hear from a parent of somebody who is being tried as an adult, and they're sitting in an adult prison, for lack of a better word, kind of what they're looking for when it comes to this quote unquote fair justice. Because again, there is a victim in this scenario as well, 18-year-old Tyrone Perrin.
Well, and that's where there needs to be something in between, right? That serious crime, but also a young person. And maybe it's a rare scenario, but something has to be in between there. Something to look forward to is hearing more from that parent during your report. And we will see you at 5 and 6 as well. Elise Person, thanks.
Thanks.
All right, folks. Candace Scalese, our morning anchor, noon anchor, she kind of stumbled upon something today and then ended up doing a report about it. We're news gatherers all the time. We're curious like you are. And sometimes we have the privilege as journalists to get a little more access and ask some big questions. And so she stumbled upon some breaking news and ended up filing this report.
This fire started around 10 o'clock this morning, and if you look behind me, there are 3 row homes impacted, and it looks like at least one of them is destroyed. The other 2 might be salvageable, but the fire chief tells me the fire started in between the 2nd and the 3rd floor, and there was actually fire coming from the roof when one of the residents called in for help. We're told an 88-year-old woman, I actually spoke with her daughter, who says her mother was able to escape the fire. She's unharmed, and we know from the fire chief everyone else who lived in these homes unharmed as well. There were actually some residents who were running out from the fire carrying the pets in their arms. So what's happening now is firefighters are investigating. They're also putting out any potential hot spots. They had to tear down some of the walls and the roof to put out the fire. So that was a challenge. And the fire chief tells me one of the big challenges here on the scene today was the weather. It was so cold that some of the fire hydrants were frozen. So they had to not only call in other departments, but find other fire hydrants to use. They also had some firefighters slipping and falling because when they were spraying the home with that water, it was freezing on the ground. So they brought in a salt truck too. PPL also on the scene today, making sure that everyone was okay because they are dealing with electricity. So they had to shut down the block with electricity as well. So this investigation continues. The good news, the silver lining here, everybody okay, but these really cold temperatures posing a lot of challenges for the firefighters. And that woman I spoke to on the scene earlier, she didn't want to go on camera, but she tells me her mother made it out safely, but she lived in the home behind me for 60 plus years. Her mother did. And the woman tells me she actually grew up here, and they were just watching as the firefighters were battling everything. So we'll keep you updated as soon as we learn a cause to this fire, but right now they are saying it is accidental. For now, reporting in Harrisburg, I'm Candace Scalese, CBS 21 News.
Another fire. You see a lot of those, unfortunately. You see a lot of fires during this time period. People trying to stay warm because it's so cold out there. And you heard some of the challenges about the firefighters. Some of these hydrants frozen. And then once they are fighting the fire, the water ends up going everywhere. If you've ever seen one of these scenes where they're fighting the fire, yes, they're getting the hose, they're moving it here, moving it there. Water kind of gets everywhere. Well, that water in temperatures this cold turns to ice immediately. And now you've added in a traction issue for these guys that are carrying these big long hoses and trying to fight these fires. So a lot of different kinds of challenges in weather like this. Let's talk about the weather for a moment here. Hopefully you're watching our newscast. You're going to see Tom Russell's at the auto show, but I want to just give you a little feel about what what we're seeing on our website when it comes to the temperatures. Thank goodness the worst of the worst are gone. So we're here on a Thursday. It was cold this morning. It'll be cold again tonight, but at least finally, you're seeing some of the highs get into the 30s and even the 40s as you look through right here. Finally, yeah, 40 by Tuesday, Wednesday next week, and the lows not in single digits anymore after tomorrow. That will be nice. And I'm telling you, tomorrow afternoon, we're going to hit 30. If it's not windy, it's going to feel amazing just because we're starting to get used to, unfortunately, the super frigid stuff that's been really, really rough in a lot of scenarios, including for those firefighters. All right, folks, a lot to talk about. We got through a lot of it, but there's even more to see on our newscast coming up at 5 and 6. Make sure that you are always notified when these special 21 Next streams come on YouTube by obviously becoming a subscriber and then clicking notifications. Click those on and like this and tell us what you think about it as well if you find some time. I'm Joel D in the place to be on 21 Next. We'll see you next time.